Hello, everyone. This is Chad Hill, and thank you for joining our pay-per-click webinar today. I also have Adam Stetzer on the phone.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you all again.
So we had a lot of interesting questions that were sent in, and I hopefully covered most of them in the webinar today in the slides I've prepared. So first, I wanted to start with just a recap of what are the top pay-per-click platforms. And as you can probably imagine, that list has to begin with Google AdWords. Across most of our campaigns that we run in paid search, we see the vast majority of our clicks still coming in through Google AdWords. And I think this has changed a little over time, but generally speaking, most of our small business and even medium or large customers start with Google AdWords, and across the board, we're probably seeing 90% of our clicks coming in from Google AdWords. There is definitely higher competition in Google AdWords, but they definitely have the largest reach, and we tend to see the best results in terms of intent for people to convert or make phone calls. And so we continue to really focus most of our paid search effort on Google AdWords because we're seeing the results in terms of leads generated, phone calls made coming from Google versus some of the other options here. And by far, they allow us to tap into really, really fantastic display and retargeting opportunities that, again, compared to other platforms, we're able to get our ads out, more impressions across a wider network of sites than we can through any other ad network that we're working with today. Nipping at its heels and certainly growing leaps and bounds is Facebook. Facebook, though, has very specific times where it works well and in other cases where it doesn't work as well. I put here that it's definitely really good for tapping into expressed interests. So whereas with Google AdWords, you're judging someone's intent based on the keyword they're searching for, search engine optimization firm, someone's looking to hire a search engine optimization firm. In Facebook, you're not really doing that as much. But if you're the kind of person who is selling hotel vacations or hotels in Orlando and someone's joining a group about the tips and tricks of going to Disney World or updating their status message about their being really excited about going on their trip to Disney, Facebook could be really good for you. Or same thing, if you have a very specific interest that you talk a lot about or join groups in Facebook, it's also good. So for example, we had a client that was running a cooking convention or expo in the DC area, and they wanted to tap into people who had expressed interest in Rachel Ray and Paula Deen and different types of cooking and entertaining interest groups. So Facebook was a really, really good way to tap into that audience, and it continues to sort of grow in their ability to target different interests. But the one downside of Facebook, at least that we've seen, is that if you're trying to drive traffic from Facebook to a client's website and get that traffic to convert on the client's website, the conversion rates have been very low, and in many times disappointingly low. If, however, you're trying to get engagement on Facebook, get people to like your page on Facebook or to take other actions on your Facebook page, it's actually pretty good. But you just have to really decide, what are we trying to do? Yahoo and Bing sort of bring up the rear.
That's interesting. Do you have any theories on why that conversion rate is just so darn low there?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with intent. I mean, I think the conversion rates that you see typically, people are in Facebook, and so they've made a choice to be there. They want to click around to other places in Facebook. They may like pages, join groups, do different things like that. But I think that it's just sort of a mindset thing to get them to leave the website and go interact on this other website, enter information at the other website. We just don't see the same conversion rate that we do, again, with Google AdWords. But that's my guess. I don't know, Adam, do you have any thoughts on it? What do you do when you're on Facebook?
I don't, and I'm probably not a great Facebook user compared to the rest of the society, but so I wonder what your thoughts are. I mean, I'm only in there maybe once a week. I do a few updates. It's sort of in my schedule to check my Facebook, and then I move on. But I know there are people, and I've seen the studies, who use use it every day, and the time on site is insane. We were talking about in the office here just the other day that it's really doing way, way better than Google Plus in terms of the stickiness factor. But I was just interested in why conversion rates might be low. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, one more thought there. Just we have an e-commerce client, and they have a relatively high ticket item. And when we drive traffic from Google AdWords, we get sort of let's just call it the benchmark conversion rate. When we drove traffic from Facebook, that was a quarter and tenth, I don't remember, but it was significantly lower to the point where it really didn't make sense. We flipped with that client, though. They really wanted to investigate and stay in with Facebook because they, and we do to a certain extent as well, believe that that's where growth will be in terms of places to advertise. So we came up with a campaign for them where we actually have the traffic leave the site, come to their website, but that page was a landing page, and it was primarily focused on signing up for some interesting information they'd put together, almost a white paper, but more of a consumer-oriented white paper. And the conversion rate to that downloadable asset was pretty good, and then their goal was then to use email to nurture those people into purchasing. So we're still sort of midstream on that. The conversion rate still, when you take into account the nurturing, is still lower than what we see with just a straight Google AdWords click. But using some creative ways to gather information and nurture, we have been able to get it a little higher than it was just with the sheer click out and hoping someone would buy. But
yeah,
more to come
that's
on
interesting. That. Interesting. Yeah, a few comments came in. They said, Nathan said, for example, I think it says that Facebook is really more social and websites are not. Dominic chimed in here too. It says people go to Google, they're often looking for something. From Facebook, they might be more interested in what's happening in their friends' lives or in their own life. So it's just sort of a different mindset. I think those are very valid points.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then bringing up the rear, at least on this first slide, are our good friends Ad Center, which now is, you can get through Yahoo and Bing. I think that, again, Microsoft continues to push Ad Center. They have to. There definitely are lower search volumes on AdWords, but they do occasionally come out with some interesting ideas in advertising, and they do have the relationship with Facebook, and so there's some tie-ins that they've been able to put together. Again, there's generally less competition in there, but there tends to be a lot less search volume. So, dollar for dollar, when a client comes to us and says, I have $1,000 and I know I need to pay you something to manage this campaign for me, we have to charge more if we're going to be managing multiple networks. And so usually what we say is, let's put your dollars and maximize those in AdWords first. And then if we want to raise the budget or we have extra money because we can't spend it efficiently in AdWords, then we may go to Yahoo or Bing through Ad Center. But it tends to be something we do sort of as a secondary optimization approach. Okay, then on top of our primary pay-per-click networks, there are a bunch of sort of, I would call them tier 2, and there's actually far more than are on this list. And for some of our larger clients, last year I think we churned through 15 or 20 different combination of ad exchanges and ad networks and different advertising options, trying to see if there were any out there that we had looked over that were good opportunities. Didn't really find any great ones, but these are the ones we tend to use when we go outside of the three that we mentioned on the first page. So Marchex is really good for B2B advertisers. Marchex has a paid search product where they've gone out and partnered with a lot of higher end, or I'd say online magazine type websites or publications that have sort of a higher end audience, and so Marchex is willing to pay them a higher rev share than Google would. So Marchex has been able to sort of grab a group of pretty good websites with their pay-per-click products. So Marchex is one. LinkedIn ads are also really good when you're doing some sort of B2B or you're trying to target someone when they're in that work mindset. So for some of our clients who have a very specific buyer, so again, we have a couple of B2B software providers, and they want to target their purchaser. So whether that's the IT guy or the CFO of the company or whoever it might be, but when you're targeting a specific title of a person in an organization, LinkedIn is very good. We've been playing around with StumbleUpon. StumbleUpon has been pretty good at just getting extra clicks. So one of the questions was, where can I get cheap clicks? So I think StumbleUpon is a place to get cheap clicks, but they also said cheap quality clicks. So those are hard, those are few and far between, but StumbleUpon has been good for sort of trying to get interest, and we used it a little bit with the web grader to drive some just initial usage of the web grader, and we've been looking at using that for some other more kind of buzzworthy ideas that we've had and that we work on for our clients. So StumbleUpon is something that we do use occasionally. E-commerce guys, we definitely go to the comparison shopping engines. So there's NextTag and there's a couple other ones that we use. So these guys allow, when you're searching in the Google for product feeds, these guys will do comparisons of where to buy a certain product, and for e-commerce providers, it's a pretty good option. And then Chango is one that we've played around with a little bit. What they do is they watch search query information and they set and target advertising based on things you've been searching for. So these are the guys that, when we talked a couple of months ago about how Google was starting to hide keyword referral data when going to new websites, these are the guys that Google's probably a little afraid of, because these guys were essentially using Google search query data to decide what kind of ads to target to people. So I think it was hitting a little too close to home, so Google said, yeah, we're going to start blocking this data. Okay, so the next thing is to talk about who are good candidates for pay-per-click. And specifically, can a small business with a low budget have success in pay-per-click? And the answer is definitely yes, but you have to understand and make sure you set expectations correctly. So the first thing to really look at is, are there any closely related keywords with high intent? And what I mean there is, you don't want to have a small business customer educating the market on, and I'm just going to use plumbing for example. So you don't want to have a small business plumber spending their precious resources educating the market on how to fix your sink yourself, right? So you need to be very careful about sorting through keywords to make sure that the keywords that you're advertising on are in fact keywords that have a very high intent for someone to be needing that service. And so that's the first thing, and that's one of the biggest mistakes we see when we take over small business pay-per-click accounts, is that they've got this kind of campaign running on full blast, and they typed in the term plumber, and they're getting clicks for all sorts of random keywords, and so they really have not gone through the process of filtering down and really picking the high-value keywords and sorting through the low-value ones. And honestly, this is really no different than running a SEO campaign where you start off and you have the wrong keyword. The difference is that with the SEO campaign, what you're wasting is you're wasting time and money, at least, but it's a set amount of money each month, but you're certainly wasting time. So if you spend 5 months optimizing your website on a keyword that's never going to convert, you lost a lot of time. In Google AdWords, you probably have the management fee, but you also have the media budget, and here you're not only, you're wasting probably more money than you are even with SEO, because you probably have your SEO, your pay-per-click management fee plus media budget, and you may be getting terms that are completely irrelevant. So focusing down on those relevant phrases is really important. The other thing that we talked about a minute ago with the Google Display Network is that a lot of people run from the Google Display Network. There was a lot of talk early on, maybe a year ago or so, how when you start an AdWords campaign, you should immediately turn off the display network within Google. And I think a lot of people still are afraid of the display network. But the great thing about display network, and I'll just step back for a second and say what the display network is. When you think about Google has two primary networks. They have their search network and their display network. The search network is what we all think of as Google proper. You go to Google, you type in a keyword, you see results, and on that results page there's some paid ads and there's organic ads. The display network is, what they've done is they've gone out and given a way for website publishers to monetize their website by placing ad units. And the really difficult part, as we all know, is that we can all put ad units on our websites, but selling those ad units is really difficult. So what Google brings to website publishers is this massive number of people who are interested in advertising and have their credit card on file with Google and who may want to put their ad on that publisher's website. So Google can sort of say, hey, we'll split the revenue 50-50, or even worse. I don't really actually know what the AdSense payout is, and I think it depends on the tier of who you are. But Google can split that revenue and bring the audience. The nice thing there is that now, as again, someone running an AdWords campaign, I not only can tap into the people searching for those relevant keywords at Google on Google Search Network, but I can also get my display ad to show when people are on different websites. So again, let's take the plumber example. A little different, maybe a little bit of a riskier tactic for a slightly larger advertiser, but we might say, let's run our current search campaign where we come up for terms like plumber and emergency plumber and 24-hour plumber, those kinds of terms. But I actually think there's a lot of people that are going to be out reading about how to maybe fix their toilet, and they're going to read through the instructions and say, whoa, I can't do that. I need to call somebody. So what if right next to those instructions on DIYnetwork.com, I could have a little ad saying, too tough, getting in over your head, don't want to flood your house, call us now and we'll take care of this task for you. That's a great opportunity to sort of get your message out, very relevant because someone's reading these instructions, and you're taking a risk that maybe some of those people are basically, are a good number of those people maybe really are going to do it themselves. But if you can convince a couple to maybe give you a call and give you a chance to give a price or give a quote, you could actually convert some of those people. So I think we can take that example to a lot of different places. The difference is the cost per click is going to be a lot lower on that DIY network site because the risk is a little higher. In the end, what we often see is that lower cost per click, it's going to have a lower conversion rate to leads, but the fact that cost per click is so much lower, the cost per conversion or the cost per phone call is actually lower than duking it out with the 11 other plumbers on the search network who are willing to bid that term up to $15 because they know they really want that call. So those are some opportunities with small business and how to think about maybe whether or not you can plug a client into pay-per-click.
Yeah, a few questions for you here, Ted. What is the primary difference in consumers who click on the PPC ads versus those who click on organic ads, or is there one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have the 2012 Marketing Sherpa report. I was kind of digging through that the other day. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me as being a real reason. There's definitely, we believe in every sort of test and that we've seen around doing eye tracking studies says that the vast majority of people go to those organic results. But one of the things that Google has done over the last probably year is they've tried to make those paid search results look a lot more like the organic results. And if people can remember, 3 or 4 years ago, they've really played around with the shade of where the sponsored links are. So, if you kind of look at your screen a little bit crooked, sometimes that shade, that lighter yellowy orange color is harder to discern than when it used to be blue. I don't know if anyone can remember, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago, but the ads used to be like in a blue area at the top and on the right-hand side. So Google's played with that a lot to try to get those ads at the top to be a little bit, to look more and feel more like the typical search results. And then from a consumer behavior standpoint, I have my own opinions. I know sometimes there are cases where I find that the paid search results are actually sometimes more relevant than wading through all the lead gen sites on certain types of terms. So I think it depends on a little bit on what the organic search results look like, but we know for sure they get clicked. And when they get clicked, we see good conversion rates. The click-through rate probably isn't as good as an organic search result, but because you're paying per click, it doesn't matter because you only pay when someone does click.
Yeah, that's good information. I think the other thing that always cracks me up about this question is that everyone I talk to anecdotally, non-SEO, not in this business, they say, oh, I never click on those paid ads on the side, never ever, and everyone seems to take that position, yet we know Google is a very successful publicly traded business based on this model, so obviously that's not the case. A couple other ones for you here, Chad. Do you see any signs that the local mapping tools will become pay-per-click at some point?
They do have, there are some paid units that you can get on different places on the paid, on the maps. I know AdWords Express, which is a relatively new product that used to be called Boost and then now is AdWords Express, focuses a little bit more on your place listing and the map results. So I think that Google will continue to, like I said, we talked about the organic search results page. They're going to continue to look for ways to merge the two on top of each other. I don't think that means that, and just like it does with the organic search results, I do not think that means that in the 7-pack for local map results on the normal search engine results page, that we're going to see that if you pay, you can get higher up. I think that's going to continue to be, there's going to be organic signals and natural signals that drive that 7-pack. But when you get to the map, if you do go to a map page and you search for something, there are some places where you do see some ad units showing up now, and they play with them constantly.
Cool. And one last one for you before we leave this slide. AdWords is very expensive for SEO categories. Have you found an inexpensive route for us to get leads to our personal reseller websites?
Yeah, that is true. The SEO and online marketing category is very expensive. So I think that the next, I think we have a whole separate set of webinars on how to generate leads. What we tend to recommend and focus on is taking advantage of, feet on the street and being local in your community. Or we have a lot of people who are in specific industries. So if you're a person who's focused on selling SEO and online marketing services in Atlanta, there's a lot of networking groups to get involved with and ways to sort of get your name out there. If you're in a vertical niche like selling veterinary websites and online marketing, like our example VetHubs we use, there are trade shows and people that talk about it, things to do with how to do marketing and websites for vets. So that's kind of the approach we take and recommend.
Right. There's no magic bullet on that, guys. If it was easy and inexpensive, we'd probably be trying it. But that's the magic of the partnership that we're engaged in right here is, you can find those leads and generate those contacts in your business, and we can have the scale and the technology and all the back office things that we can spend our time working on and refining the product development. And together we can accomplish a scale of business that neither one of us could do on our own. So that's really the whole reason this partnership works.
Okay. Yeah, great. Let's talk about pay-per-click budget because there were some questions on this, and then I think this is the last slide that is going to be text, and then we have a couple illustrations here. So I definitely agree that initially determining a budget can be tricky. We often hear questions like this: how much does it take to own my keywords? How many searches are there for keyword X in my market? How much do they cost per click? If I pay $4, will I always be in the first position? Those questions we get a lot, and they're unfortunately unanswerable in those particular ways. Let's take each of those and walk through them. So owning a keyword. Well, there really is no owning a keyword. There are definitely lots of pay-per-click advertising scams where people say, for $500, don't do pay-per-click, just pay a flat fee and own your keyword. And so what they're basically doing is giving you some super obscure keyword that no one looks for, and you're paying them $200. They're putting the money in the budget, and then supposedly you always come up on that keyword. Whether or not they turn it off from midnight to 3 a.m., there's probably all sorts of tricks that go on there. But you can't really own a keyword. It's an auction. So every time someone searches for something, there is an auction at Google that determines who's going to come up in that particular search results page. How many searches are there for keyword X in my market? Google used to have a keyword tool that you could actually localize and say, I want to know plumber, and I'm looking in the Washington, D.C. or the Rochester, New York area. Our experience was that was really unreliable, and it must have been really unreliable because at some point Google took it away. So unfortunately, there's not a good way of saying, here's how many searches there are in a particular market. That being said, you can go in, especially for broad match keywords. So let's just take the example. You can say Rochester plumber. The only people looking for Rochester plumber are people probably in Rochester. So you can look and see what the search volume is on that keyword. But to say plumber and use the Google broad match feature to sort of gather, or to use the Google geo-targeting feature to only target people searching plumber in Rochester, that getting an exact number on that is really impossible. So that's a question we get, one that's hard to answer. We'll go into some ways to get around that in a second. The next thing is, if I pay $4, will it always be in the first position? It could be today, but tomorrow the person who now is in number 2 could say, I want to be in position 1. I'm going to be willing to pay $4.10. So again, it goes back to, this is a real-time auction, and every day numbers are changing. We had a client that we've been working with for quite a while who was really unhappy that on one of their main terms, they'd slipped down to position 3 or 4. But in the last 4 months, there are at least 4 or 5 new people in this category. So we're looking at it saying, those other people are bidding way more than you currently can afford, given the goal, which would be, you need a lead at $40 per lead. So again, it's a very dynamic auction. Things change quite often. It's competition based, and there are some other factors that go into, what you have to bid to get into a certain position. So usually what I say is, let's flip the conversation around and really get a better understanding of the expectations. And so those of you who have worked with us on a pay-per-click campaign have seen our pay-per-click campaign questionnaire, and we go through sort of an interview where we want to flush out the goal and really the client's expectations. So these are some of the things that we typically talk about. First of all is there a certain number of leads or customers that the client is looking for? Because the last thing we want to do is have someone's expectations be they're going to get 1,000 leads a month with a budget of $100. We know that's just not going to work. So we need to sort of understand, how many customers are you looking for? The next one would be to start to get into, so if you need 10 new customers in this example, let's get into how many clicks we need in order to generate 10 new customers. So the first thing is, how many calls, prospects, does it take to actually get 10 new customers? And we usually ask, so for every 10 calls you get, how many of those are you able to turn into customers? And of course, everyone is very confident in their sales abilities and is going to tell you some really high number. Let's just plug in 50%. So that's probably what they'll tell you. If it's lower than that, then plug in the number they give you. So in that case, that means in order to get 10 new customers, we need to get 20 phone calls, right? So 20 phone calls, we close half of those. So 50% of 20 is 10. Okay, so 20 phone calls. Now, what we need to now figure out is how many clicks to the website do we need in order to get those 20 phone calls. So then what you also need is you need some sort of website conversion rate. Now, this can vary from no conversion to awesome conversion, and we'll talk about some benchmarks here. But if you think about it, this is really where the rubber meets the road. A bad website is going to take more clicks to get those 20 phone calls, which means you're going to pay more in the first place. So all of you out there who do website work know this, and you sell this often, that you need a website that converts. Let's just say that on average, a good service-based business, we're using the plumbing example here, is going to yield about a 10% click to call rate. So for every 10 people who visit the website, they find it, they like it enough, they search around the pages, they're going to pick up the phone and call you. So in this case, using our math, that means we need 200 clicks. So 200 clicks, 10% of those call you, that's your 20 phone calls. You close half of those, that's your 10 new customers. Now all we need is get an average cost per click, and let's just say that we do some research in Google Keyword Tool. By the way, we bump up their estimate because a lot of times it's low, but we bump it up a little bit, and we believe the estimated cost per click is going to be $4. So to get those 10 new customers, we think it's going to take about $800 in budget to make that happen. Now, everything there, at the end of the day, are assumptions that we work through together. So if at some point the program is not successful, you can always go back to this worksheet and say, look, we ran through this. We talked about your close rate, 50%. It turns out it was only 10%. So these leads were a lot more expensive than we thought. Or, hey, we thought your website would convert at 10% to phone calls. It was only converting at 5%. So we need to go back and do some more work to see if we can get that conversion rate up, or we need to look at the clicks to make sure that the keywords that they're searching on are very relevant. So really my point in going here is that I really like to flip the conversation around and get engaged with the customer to have them join us and join you to sort of be a part of the team that comes up with the assumptions, and then we can be there to measure it, write it down so that we can measure it. So I would take something like this, and I would go to this next slide, and I would actually kind of play around with some scenario planning. So this actually is a slightly different set of numbers, but you kind of can get the point here. What I've done here is basically taken some different scenarios on what the conversion rate would be with a given cost per click, and I've then calculated the average cost per lead. So we can go down this type of sheet and say, hey, if the cost is only $5 per click, because once we get into the auction, everyone stays cool and keeps their bids around $5, and the next guy doesn't freak out and raises bid to $7, which means that we need to raise our bid as well. So if it stays at 5%, and we think the website gets the 5% conversion rate we had hoped, or the 8% conversion rate we had hoped, this is going to be the cost per lead that you'll get from the program. And then you can turn around, this is sort of looking at it a slightly different way, turn around and say, okay, now based on some of these numbers, a $50 lead or an $87 lead, here's kind of what the budget needs to be to get the volume of leads you're looking for. So I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions, Adam, that we have so far?
No, they seem to understand this perfectly.
Great. Okay, this information is in the PPC questionnaire that we can send out, and basically running through this type of analysis again is critical, I think, to having success in a pay-per-click campaign, because you are dealing with this media and the budget around the media, and you ultimately want to make sure that you have the right budget, you have the right expectations, the right goal, and then we're going to be working alongside of you to measure and monitor all of these different assumptions, and where needed, make recommendations. So you may, for those of you that are running active campaigns with us, when we send you ideas for landing pages, we've looked at that. What that really usually means is that we've looked at the cost per click, and there's really not much we can do there. We've looked at all the keywords and the ad copy, and we think we have that tuned about right. We're looking for some way to improve the performance, and so what we'll do is we'll come back to you with recommendations on a landing page, or if you need us to help you build it, we can help you build it. But those things often will help improve the results of a campaign.
Yeah, and I'm amazed there's no questions on your grid, because I know people struggle with selling this product. I'd like to hear actually from some folks about why don't they push this as much? Why do they think SEO is an easier product to sell? Because in some ways, SEO has a whole host of ambiguities that PPC does not, and it's certainly immediate gratification. So to me, what Chad's outlined here is an excellent addition to be packaged up with SEO or email marketing or web design. And so I'd be kind of interested in the feedback on where does the sale break down? Why is it hard? Why aren't you selling more of it?
We can take that question, Adam, when they come in, unless you get one, just interrupt me. Okay, one more slide.
I did get one.
Yeah.
One problem I've run into is that people do PPC on their own and don't see the value in having someone else do it. How can we sell having us do it for them rather than them going it alone? That's a great question, Chad. I don't know if you've got some thoughts on that.
No, that is a great question. And I think that one of the things you can do is you can look and audit the campaign. And I think a lot of times if you go back and you ask some of these questions about what results are they seeing, you'll find that they've kind of got AdWords on a set it and forget it campaign. And in my experience, not 100% of the time, but 80% of the time, when we look at a campaign that's sort of been just on autopilot, we can usually go in and find savings that would justify us managing the account. So just right off the bat, we could go in and say, look, by just cleaning this up a little bit, we can actually pay for our management fees. And then from there, there's usually optimization on top of that that can add to it to ultimately drive it. Now, if they're spending $100 a month or even $200 a month, it's pretty hard to really get in and be able to manage that. But if you have someone who's $1,000 or more and they're not spending a lot of time on it, it's possible that we can improve the campaign performance and basically have our fees pay for themselves through their savings, and then from there probably get them better results on top of that in terms of just optimizing and tweaking conversion rate, working with them to get the conversion rate to improve.
Interesting. Yeah, a couple other comments here. I probably should add this to my services. One person wrote in, and again, we would really highly encourage that. We've talked about this in other webinars. The more you can be the go-to person for all their digital marketing needs, the better your retention is going to be, and you're upselling your bill. You're just that much more integrated into their marketing program. Someone else wrote, our salespeople are primarily SEO, and they don't fully understand the PPC product, so they shy away from it and focus on SEO. I don't know, Chad, if you've got that kind of problem with your sales folks and you're looking at this going, yeah, maybe I could grow my revenues or expand horizontally into PPC, how would you help your sales team come up to speed?
Well, I think the best way to do it would be probably to review this kind of webinar and look at where pay-per-click fits in. And again, I think from a retention standpoint, we've talked about this before, our experience is the more services that we're providing and the more engagement we have with any one client, the more we can lean on things that are going well and shift attention away from maybe the things that aren't looking quite as good that month. And I don't mean to say that we're not honest about what's going on. We always are, but how everyone runs into this experience. There's oftentimes there are things that are doing really well, and there's things that are just still taking their time. The relationship between pay-per-click and SEO is that you can usually have pay-per-click get immediate results on the keywords that we're working on with SEO. So the beauty of it is that here's what you can get today on these keywords. And by the way, we're working on moving your position up on those keywords organically. So when they get there, you can either get incrementally more because having 2 slots on the search results page is going to get you more clicks, or you can start to pull money out of pay-per-click if you want. So really it gives you some flexibility to have more services and more engagement with that client. And then the other thing is that it gives you sort of that, while the SEO results are sort of taking their time to kind of come up, you get a sort of an immediate bang with some pay-per-click to get things kind of working with the client.
Yeah, well put. I mean, a couple other comments. SEO pays better. Someone else said, I would say that if I'm going to get $2,000 out of a client, I'd rather make a whole lot more of that by keeping it focused on SEO and give less to Google. And I understand that feeling, but as Chad just said, that may be a little bit short-sighted because it's definitely been our experience that with a more well-rounded marketing engagement that includes SEO and PPC and email, and you've heard us talk about this when we're plugging some of the other channels you can sell, you're going to have better retention. It's just going to stand to logic. And I guess one of the questions, Chad, I would have is like, so if some folks listening are thinking, yeah, okay, on my next meeting with this client, I am going to try to dig into why they're doing PPC themselves and think of, plant the seeds that maybe I could do it better. What would be the top 3 leading questions you would ask your client? I would think phone tracking would be an obvious first one, right, to see how well advanced they are in setting up tracking phone numbers and tracking their analytics. But what else could they ask that would be a good probing question to kind of open that conversation and feel out whether the client might be ready to turn that over?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we see is to look at what's called the search query report. So without you need a little training. You probably need someone to pop you into the screen. In fact, I can do this. Well, let's see here. There's a screen called the search query report, and what it does is it tells you what keywords they're actually getting their clicks from. And if you mention that report and basically they don't know what you're talking about, there's a good chance that when they open that report up, there's going to be some real interesting information there about what clicks they're getting that they probably had no idea that they're getting clicks on. The other big aha is to look at the split, and we can maybe type some of these up and put it out as in the notes that go out with the webinar. The other big thing that we see is a lot of times by default Google leaves the display network on and sets the bid on the display network to the same bid that you're setting for your search terms. So often what happens is a very large percentage of the client's budget is getting spent in the display network at a cost per click that's way higher than it needs to be. And so they think they're getting lots of searches on plumber, but really what they're getting is they're getting ads on sites talking about whether it's jobs for plumbers or whether it's the how-to sites, and paying too much for those how-to ads, right? So, like I said earlier, that's a riskier strategy. It's not worth $5 to get a click from a how-to fix your toilet site. It's worth 97 cents or 75 cents. So a lot of times they don't know that they've set that up that way. So those are two things: search query report and what is the split between display and search. The other thing to talk about is, as Adam said, really measuring your return on investment and tracking the results. So have they set up conversion tracking, and do they know which keywords are converting? Do they know do they know how many phone calls they're getting? And we can track really phone calls down to the ad group level if they want to. So there's a lot of tracking that would help them understand maybe search is actually doing better than they even think, right? Maybe they're spending $500 a month and they think they're getting a couple leads off it, but when in fact they're actually getting those couple leads plus 15 or 20 phone calls, maybe they'd be willing to spend even more money on search. So really understanding what they're getting out of it is another important component. And then there's a whole host of services, and this is really when it comes down to the reasons to outsource, coming down to technical expertise and industry expertise. Every day we're engaging with the Google AdWords team on various accounts. The people, Google has an account management team that we work with that sort of keeps us apprised of all the latest and greatest features. So we're constantly looking for new tools that they're rolling out, whether that be mobile advertising or retargeting advertising. We're always looking for ways to sort of bring those new ideas into our clients' accounts. And it's funny because while Google talks about trying to make AdWords simple and more approachable to the small advertiser, they keep adding more and more complexity to AdWords to the point where it actually is, for the small guy, harder and harder to use. They're trying to offset that with some products like AdWords Express, but AdWords Express is so simplistic that you can't even pick keywords. So they still don't really have that happy median between the sort of the novice guy who's looking at it once a week and sort of a true professional who's in there all day long and understands the system back and forth, or sort of through and through. So we can bring that for you.
Yeah, a couple other questions here. I'm looking to do PPC for a local small business who has a really small budget. What's the minimum? You may have already said this before, but what's the minimum budget you could handle?
So the minimum ongoing management fee that we have is $199 a month. So that is for us to basically manage a basic AdWords account, and I can actually I'll just flip through this slide really fast. For anyone with a budget under $1,000. Now last year we rolled out what we call our PPC launch program, and our PPC launch program allows us to build a campaign and then launch it for the client. We don't do any ongoing management, and we do that for it's basically just a very little amount of time for us to go in, set up a basic campaign with 10 basic keywords, a couple ads, and then we launch the campaign, and then we hand it back off to the client. So we can do that for I believe the fee is $99 reseller rate. So that's something that we can do pretty easily for you.
Great. And then another one here, Chad. Do you have a sample PPC proposal that includes this language and structure that I could use for myself and my salespeople trying to get up to speed on this product?
Yes, we do, and you can get that. Just request that from your account manager. We have we have stock proposals, and we even have a SEO and pay-per-click sort of combined proposal that you can use. Okay, so we have a few minutes left here. I want to talk a minute about some of these options about bidding on keywords. We've talked mostly today about cost per click advertising, where you're focused on bidding on what I would be willing to pay per click. There's a couple other options that do present themselves. The screenshot on the left is from Google. They have some options they've been rolling out that allow Google to automatically bid and maximize how many clicks you get on a daily basis. Ultimately, they bill you on a cost per click basis, but you don't have to ever say, I'll pay $4 for this one and $3 for that keyword. So that's an option that they have. Also, it's disabled in this particular screenshot, but at the bottom they have something called focus on conversions. And what that does is, for someone who has enough leads, you can actually tell Google, I am willing to pay up to $25 per lead, 40, 50, whatever it is, and you guys handle going and finding the keywords that I should be bidding on, and then just make it so that those leads only ever cost me $25. Now, it sounds a little too good to be true, and it is if you're starting off from scratch. You have to have enough history. I think it's like 15 leads in the last 7 days, so you have to be a little bit higher volume in order for their system to learn which keywords are driving your leads. So you have to spend the money up front and a regular cost per click based system to sort of teach the system which keywords convert for you. But then at some point you can kind of flip the switch and let them go do some more exploration of other keywords, other types of advertising to try to maximize the number of leads you're getting for a particular price. So that's a feature they have. One of the questions was on, what about mobile advertising? What's the status of mobile advertising? Again, I'm focused mostly today on Google AdWords because we would tend to include a mobile campaign as part of a regular search marketing program. So Google today has the ability to target different types of devices. So I actually put the screenshot in here and you can see this. You have the ability to say target all devices, or target desktops and laptops, mobile devices with full browsers, tablets with full browsers, and then you can even get into picking different types of operating systems. I want only iOS or Android. So there's a lot of different ways and flavors that you can sort of target ads in with Google's mobile options. Best practices today are that if you're really going to focus on mobile advertising, you need to set up a search dedicated campaign and a mobile campaign, because you really want to be able to see, and today Google doesn't make it super easy for you to break out what's being spent on mobile and what's not. So what we generally recommend for our larger advertisers who are running larger mobile campaigns is to create a second campaign targeting just mobile devices and then managing that. And I guess if you were only focused on mobile, you could actually go in and set up multiple campaigns targeting different types of devices. This is my iOS campaign. This is my Android campaign. But again, for most of our clients, we're not selling apps. We tend to be trying to advertise service businesses on mobile devices, and this is really where we're focused. What's very interesting about mobile advertising is that the results primarily come in through phone calls for our types of advertisers. So I have a mobile call extension screen at the bottom here, where for one of the mobile campaigns, we set up call extensions so that in the ad unit on the mobile device, it actually has a click-to-call number, and they can just click that phone number without having to go to the website. So you don't need a mobile optimized website. You're advertising 24-hour plumber services. Someone looks up a plumber on their iPhone, they see the ad, they click, and they're on the phone with you. So we're able to actually measure the results of those mobile campaigns through using call tracking. So that's what this is demonstrating. Okay, a couple pay-per-click selling points. So if you do get in the situation on why us, a few things that we can bring to you as part of our outsourced services. First is that all of our analysts that run campaigns are AdWords certified, and that requires that you go through a fairly complicated test to make sure you really understand everything, all the ins and outs of Google AdWords. The second thing is that all of our analysts, everyone has to identify a goal. So we don't ever start a campaign unless we know what the goal is. And those goals can either be a cost per conversion goal or a click goal. So I want to get 10 leads at $20 a lead and I'm spending $200, or I have $200 and I want to get as many clicks as possible. We don't really love as many clicks as possible campaigns because our experience is that those tend to go away over time because people they're not seeing the value. They want to know they're getting phone calls or web leads. So we love the cost per conversion campaigns, and we're very good at managing those. We have a scoring system that basically every one of our analysts logs in every morning and looks at their score, and it gives them an idea of how an individual account is doing. And what we do is we basically take a projected spend for the month and a projected number of goals or clicks that they're going to get, and we look at the goal and we say, how well are you performing on hitting that goal? And so what we can do, and I have an example here of a screen. So this is a law client. This is a law client that we have, and what you'll see here on this screen is that his goal is, he's told us he wants to spend $500 a month, and he would like 7 leads. So it's a law firm. He knows that he has to pay a little bit to get leads. That's $71 per lead goal cost. So far, month to date, and we're essentially through the month here, so we're keeping our fingers crossed for that extra lead that comes in today. We've had 6 leads. We had 1 web form completed, and we had 5 phone calls to his business. Okay, and so essentially our system is projecting that we're essentially through the month here that you're going to be 1 shy of the goal. And so far, month to date through yesterday, he had spent $471. So he's right now currently projecting to be $12 under budget. So you can see here actually that our analyst went in this morning, and I didn't even ask her to put this note in so that I could have a good thing to demo, but you can see that basically this morning our analyst logged in, saw these same stats, and raised the daily budget to see if today she knows this is her last day of the month, she's got a little extra budget, she's 1 lead shy, so she raised the budget for today to try to spend that money so that we could get 1 more lead and hit this client's goal. So again, when you take this, if you want to show this screen, and we actually have now set up a VetHub's AdWords account, so you'll be able to demo this as well. But if you want to show your client the level of analysis and daily care that's going into an account, this is a great way to do it. And I can tell you that in most cases, not saying all, but in most cases, people are not managing their paid search campaigns like this. So this is, I think, one of the things where you can sort of take this and go and demo to your client, and they're going to love this. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree, Chad. I mean, especially for those guys who are doing set it and forget it, you can show them the screen and say, look, we've got a goal, orientation, and a statistical model that's keeping track of us tracking towards your budget, your conversion goals, and making course corrections, and you can see exactly what's happening, and it's all logged here. And we just know a lot of the folks, and some of the comments said it, my clients are doing this themselves. But what are the outcomes? So you go back to that list Chad gave you earlier of the probing questions to ask, and if you can sense, oh, well, maybe they are a little dissatisfied with it, or they just don't have time to put into it, flash a screen like this in front of them and say, look, here's what you can have from my platform and my analyst, because you have this service offering right in your portal.
Perfect. Okay, so I think the last thing I wanted to talk about is how we price, and the slide is called fees, but it's really not about fees. It's about how we price our services. So there's a lot of companies that will just charge a percentage of media. And what we found really from the beginning was that that's kind of the old way of doing it. There's a lot of work that goes into managing a campaign, and not all of it has to do with how much you spend. So we have 4 things we look at and the way we've laid out our pricing grid here. We have 4 things that we look at in order to determine what kind of effort is required for a given pay-per-click campaign. The first one is budget, because it is more difficult and takes more time to manage spending $10,000 than it does $100. So that is a factor, no doubt. The second one is number of search engines. So I mentioned that we tend to optimize and maximize Google first, and then we expand out to other search engines as we go up sort of in our management structure. The third thing is ad groups. And again, I've seen people try to price things on keywords and on number of ads, but what I like about an ad group and using that as a metric for us is that it helps us really get a sense of how complicated is this campaign. If you're an e-commerce site and you have 4,000 SKUs, we're going to need to have a lot of ad groups to cover all the different types of ads and keywords that we're going to need to cover. You may only want to spend $2,000, but if you say, I want to spend $2,000 and I want to cover all 4,000 SKUs, we need something to sort of say, no, we can't. That's much larger than what we can do for, what just fits into that budget. So we do cap out a number of ad groups. Now, ad groups can be used in different ways. I like to think of them as sort of good ideas of like how many products you have. So I'm going to keep going with my plumbing example. Plumbers have hot water heaters they have toilet issues, they have clogged drains. So there's different services they offer. There's different categories of keywords people use. There's probably different ads you want to be able to write. So that's how we bucket and we put into an ad group. Each ad group tends to have 2 ads and may have anywhere from 5 to 20 or 30, maybe even a little more keywords. So that gives you a sense of how the ad group works. The final thing that matters in terms of how much time and effort and which plan you're on is expectations for customer support and meetings, and also reporting. So if your client's going to be happy with our standard automated monthly report and daily access to the dashboard, great, we can do one of our lower tier plans. If they're going to want a weekly or every other week or monthly meeting where we get on the phone and we sort of, if you want us to get on the phone and sort of act like we're part of your team, then we're going to need, it takes more time for us to prepare for that meeting and then the time of actually having the meeting. And then in addition to that, we do have some clients who have more complicated reporting needs. So they may have a CRM system that they want us to log into and pull reports out of. So not only do they just want to know how many lead forms were completed this month, but they want us to kind of go dig into those leads and maybe see how many were considered sales ready or qualified leads. And so we can go in and pull that number out. We had 20 leads and 10 were sales ready, or 20 leads and 15 were sales ready. So we can do that kind of reporting, but it is an extra fee for us to be able to, again, take the time to go log in and pull that information together. So those are the 4 things that we use to decide which category or which plan we need to work off of in order to manage the campaign that you give us. And I think I touched on our approach, but I'll go through this one more time. So again, we have a dedicated pay-per-click analyst assigned to every campaign that we run. The paid search analyst is scored every day on how close they are to hitting their goal. Our analysts are provided tasks by the system that tell them to go review keyword reports and update ad copy. That's all workflow task generated that tells them to do these things. There's ongoing ad copy testing that we're looking at in order to try to get a better click-through rate, get your client better results. And then when needed, we provide recommendations, and then if needed, we can actually build, but we provide recommendations for better landing pages. So with that, that's all I have to cover today. Thank you very much for your time. And I don't know if there's a couple questions, Adam, here at the end.
Well, I've been typing furiously and chatting with 5 or 6 or 7 folks, so I think I got all those specific, very detail-oriented questions out in the chat. But if you have any follow-up, give us a ring. These were good questions. They're asking about budgets. They're eager to see when the VetHubs account will be ready. If you guys wanted to see some of our higher-paying examples, I kind of steered them to the account manager. So if you got anything more further, hit your account manager up. But yeah, I've also enjoyed this a great deal. I think it's very informative.
Thank you, everyone, and talk to you next time.
All right. See you guys.